You are listening to Spilling the Tea, a real estate podcast with Kristy Macero and Shelagh Maychek.
Hi everyone, you're listening to Spilling the Tea with Kristy, that's me, and Shelagh Maychek.
Hello.
Today we have special guest Prateek Singh here again. You may remember him from his riveting spooky Halloween episode. Stigmas.
Yeah. How am I supposed to say?
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was October. It is January now. And this is another one of those special topic episodes where we don't have a public guest with us today because the episode content is all about
Foreclosures.
foreclosures.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Not.
Not exciting and not appropriate to have the public involved. So we just the three of us here today, but we're going to make it juicy. Now, Shelagh, what is a foreclosure sale?
A foreclosure is where it's a legal process in which a lender is attempting to recover the balance of a loan from a borrower. So they've lent money on a property and people have stopped paying the mortgage and the lender is forcing the sale so that they can recoup some money on their asset.
Yeah, so it's basically the bank being
Yeah.
like, I'm selling the property now with a court, proceeding.
Yeah.
And the sellers have to kind of watch it all go down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, generally that's how most foreclosures are. There's also civil forfeitures as well, where criminal activity or something where, it's not just a repayment of debt. There's so many different nuances with foreclosures, but it all comes down to the conduct of sale, which is applied at the time of. But yeah, no, that's usually the broad overview of foreclosure, what Shelagh just described. So yeah.
Okay. So this is kind of a topic because foreclosures come up and people see them. It's pretty well known that they're out there.
Yeah.
And lawyers get involved, bankers get involved, and of course, realtors get involved.
Oh, yeah.
So you're going to see them. And sometimes it's properties where it's
Yeah.
priced really low and people are like, oh my God, this is a screaming deal. Let's buy it. It's like, oh, that's a quartered sale.
Yeah.
Or, oh, hey, there's something going on here.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of people think that foreclosures are screaming deals and that kind of thing, which they're not. They think that they have any rights, which they don't. It's a fun game, foreclosures. So Shelagh, we always get into you first. Would you ever consider buying a foreclosure?
That one's a little hard for me because initially I'm like, oh no, because there's a lot of risk involved in it.
Sure.
That being said, anytime I've bought has been in a market where it's generally subject free, over ask, here's your deposit
Right.
check. And that in itself is, I'd say, fairly risky, but I've gotten used to that. So that's my level of risk I'm accepting. A foreclosure, I feel I would not be inclined to purchase one. Just because
Okay.
I don't know enough about the home or what's happening. There's nothing I can do if something goes sideways.
That's right. There's
yeah.
nothing you can do if something goes side. They could sell every light
Very
bulb
true.
in that sucker.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
You're toast.
That's true.
Have you ever taken a client into a foreclosure home?
No.
Oh, interesting.
No, but I've had clients definitely send me links to it. Look at this one. And then I'm reading up on it going, oh, something looks off here. And then I read in Realtor Remarks that it's a foreclosure. And then we have to go through the spiel of explaining kind of the pros and cons of going forward
Right.
with that.
Yeah.
And have you ever gone to court for a foreclosure purchase? Have you ever had to write on one?
No, never. But I hear about this all the time. And I'm always so curious because people say you have to show up in court with your offer. And that just seems like TV magic or something. It's just beyond my comprehension.
It's not as romantic as you think.
Oh,
I'm telling
okay.
you right now. I don't even know if they
So
still do
funny.
that. We're going to get into
Yeah.
that because some rules have changed since COVID and stuff. I've only had ever one foreclosure sale ever. It was kind of thrown at me from a representative in the bank when we were back at Home Life Titus.
Right.
And I'm very thankful for agents like Prateek who know the ins and outs of this because they can be very complicated. And I know that you do these pretty frequently and you kind of take on the hard ones,
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool. That
It is, yeah, and every one is different, and there's a lot of nuances, so many different variables in foreclosure conversations. It's all very interesting.
Right. And you don't really know what you're getting.
No.
So when the bank sends it over, they don't, I'm sure they don't get into the greasy details of whatever's going on because generally there's something because most people pay their mortgage. Okay. But I got this foreclosure. It landed on my lap and I was pretty excited about it. And I ended up, at that time, there was an older gentleman that was helping me in the office, and I came up to him with this foreclosure. I was like, oh, I'm going to get a foreclosure. I'm very excited. And he's like, are you going to go by yourself? And I was like, yeah, I guess so. He's like, why don't I come with you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And I was like, good idea. I had just started my career. And of course, I'm like a little blonde thing, right? And like,
You're like, that's a great question.
yeah, am I going to go by myself? I guess I am. And he's like, I'll come with you. You know, and he's this big, giant man. So I was like, perfect.
Yeah.
And I remember pulling up to this house and went up and I knocked on the door, and this husband and wife answered, and they've got 4 kids kind of running around, and there was 6 full-size dogs, 6 full-grown dogs.
Wow.
Running around the house. You could smell the dogs. Second cracked open the door. So I was like, interesting. I think I'll leave my shoes on. They were like, you know how homeowners are like, no, leave your shoes on. And usually we're like, no, we'll take them off.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the situation, it was like, yeah, I think I'll keep them on. So
Yeah.
So we went into the house and I said, hi, I'm here on behalf of the bank. Just doing my thing. I'm the real estate agent that's appointed to sell your home. And they just looked at me in such shock and disbelief. And they were like, I can't believe this is happening. I had no idea they were going to sell our house. And so I feel like I'm breaking it to this family that this has occurred.
Like you just dropped a bomb on them.
Like I dropped a bomb on them, and their kids are there and the dogs are there. And like, so I'm sitting there going like, oh my God. So on an emotional level, I was like, oh, it's a family.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So of course, the agent I was with was like, reaches into his briefcase, pulls out the title. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Shelagh, I see that the court proceedings started on your home about 2 years ago. So you've been to court about 7 times since this has started. So this shouldn't be coming to a surprise. And I, in that instant, because I'm a very honest person, in that instant, my empathy, boom, gone. I went from empathy to equity, man. I'm like, we are going to get money from your house.
Yeah. You're like, you had me in the first half. Here we go.
I was like, how many people have they pulled this on? Which sucks. I'm not saying that that's going to be every foreclosure, but it was my experience.
Right.
And it was a great lesson because most people pay their mortgages and these guys just had not. So it was very strange. Now, Prateek, you've been in foreclosure territory a lot, and I wanted you here because you're so experienced. Do you remember the very, very first foreclosure you ever did?
Oh yeah, of course.
I love it. It's your first.
It was actually the chuckle behind that isn't the foreclosure itself.
Of course.
It was the amount what the property was worth. It was a $76,000 condo in Cloverdale. It was 6 years ago. Rentals allowed right across the casino.
Oh my goodness. Prateek's a young man, for the record. He's not like dating himself. It's not like, he's really old. Like you can't, if you're not watching, like he's young. So that must have been a couple of years ago.
I feel old. No, it was 2014.
Wow. Okay.
It was 2014. It was one to remember. It was a very easy foreclosure. It wasn't like we got an offer within a week, went to the courts. It was one of the smoothest deals I had. But that was the first foreclosure. But the shocking valley was the amount itself. And I saw the same place sold 8 months after they bought it, which was like under $100,000. For $300,000, and that was a shocker because you talk about something. But the place was upside down. They fixed it up. They sold it. They were there for a minute, but it was in that particular instance, it was turned out to be a good buy for that purchaser.
So there was no drama on this one?
No,
it was just nice and straightforward.
It was event free. I think, if I recall, it was an abandoned place.
Oh wow!
And that happens a lot in foreclosures, and even so much so that people flee the country. And
I did not know that.
I had no idea.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I love talking to you because we're always learning things.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I didn't know people.
And just for people who have zero experience with foreclosures, so if you're hired to sell them, you get an offer first, and then what happens? You wait for a court date?
Yeah. So first is an offer. You negotiate with the vendor, and if the offer is acceptable, then you're assigned a court date, and the judge or the master has to finalize the formally a sale, and the judge has to be convinced, or the courts have to be convinced that the property is being sold at market value.
Yeah.
Part of that is you want to entertain multiple bids, and if they're not, then proof is in the pudding that nobody else stepped up up, and that's
Yeah.
the value of the property. So that can be a bit challenging at times, but we have to create a formal marketing report and see everything that transpired from day one to the day of the court and what the marketing effort was. And that's a pretty tedious process, probably the most tedious process.
Yeah, because a
but
lot of people
that's-
think they
yeah.
can just bid whatever number and the bank's
Yeah.
going to take it. That's
Yeah.
not the case.
That's not the
Like
case
you
at
can
all.
have the lawyer's counter.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
have, you know, and then you go up to court, and then you know the
Yeah.
first number is always published to everyone, which people
Correct.
don't realize.
Correct.
And then you know, so the first number is out there.
So you can write on it, technically kind of get an accepted offer, but you still have to wait for the court date and the final stamp.
So you usually come with
Exactly.
2 offers on court day.
Yeah, and there's also the bank appraisal that's very important to this
Right.
puzzle, because our assessment's one thing, but the bank also wants to know if they got an independent appraisal, because that's going to go to the court. So they're going to be able to see, okay, here's a marketing report of the realtor, here's the appraiser, how far apart are we? Are we talking... I mean, there's no hard and false rule, but they just need to be convinced that, okay, we did everything
Right.
to market the property.
Yeah.
It's a high spec value, because often there's equity in the property, right? And that belongs to the previous homeowner. And courts want to be very careful that there's no loopholes, there's no, that the previous owner is getting the full value off the property. And that's the misnomer about foreclosures amongst buyers, because they think that they're going to get a score. And yes, that can be,
Right.
but not from the get-go. It just happens by design. Like if
Yeah.
that's the way you're going, and you may luck out or you may not. So
Yeah.
it's-
So
it's-
I tried to tell this family, I said, look, the
Yeah.
nicer you make it in here, the more
Yeah.
money that you might get for your home, and the more, you know, loss would be recouped from the bank, and
Yeah.
the less debt that you would owe. And
Yeah.
so I was trying to be very good with them. Of course, I had to deal with people, you know. Are you finding that a lot of the foreclosures are occupied, or is it kind of a mix? Or
It is really mixed, but sometimes when people are behind doors, that becomes one of the hardest, like in your case too, conversations, because you have to get them on board. And if there's equity in the property, they've got to know that it's for them, it's for their benefit only if they cooperate, like, you know, prepare
Yes.
a home, like you said. And I've had situations where absolutely not, and those can be very stressful to families that were supremely cooperative, and they got a pretty good bang for the buck, right? I mean, it does work, and it just comes down to how much they understand. But you know, emotions trump rationale in a distress situation, so that's unfortunately what happens. But
yeah,
most
so
of the times,
I was a younger realtor. I was
There you
younger
go.
in general, but I hadn't done that many deals by
Already?
this time. Yeah, exactly, right. I hadn't done that many deals by this time. So you feel a little more emotion when you're new.
Yeah.
And my biggest challenge with this is that it did kind of get me in the feels, and it really, my empathy kind of kicked in for the children, because there was children in the house. There's
Yes.
4 children, and I
Yes.
remember walking through the home, and they didn't move their family photos. They didn't move their kids' hockey equipment and the equestrian
Right.
stuff and all that stuff that the kids had.
Right.
And when I did the open house, and it was it was right when the market was kind of getting hot.
Right.
So there was quite a few people. We had something like 30-ish groups through.
Right.
Wow.
Of course, everyone left their shoes on, like I said. And I actually stood outside because I was like, my hair is going to smell like dog after. It was kind of funny. But it kind of sucked, because when people were coming out of the home, we had people say, oh, I recognize the family from the kids' photos.
yeah.
And
'Cause
like,
it's other people in the neighborhood coming through.
they're like, oh, they're in my son's class, or they're in my daughter's class, or they're in hockey together, or whatever. And it's horrible, because it's not the kid's fault.
Yeah.
And it's such a public thing.
Yeah.
So I found my empathy for the children, because they're not the ones who did stop paying the mortgage. It's
Right.
not their fault, but it was such a like I said, a public thing. So how do you find the balance of respecting the seller's space and their privacy? Because I mean, they didn't put the pictures away,
Right.
right? And it's not a happy thing. Foreclosures are not generally happy. So how do you find that balance of being empathetic to the fact that they're in the house, but
Yeah.
what do you do?
I think exactly kind of what you just landed to was you lend a lot of empathy, but you'll also lend a lot of compassion. And I think once you talk with an emotion that resonates with them, as opposed to come across with a strong sales pitch, it may take some time, but so far, fortunately for me, most people have understood where a sale has gone through. a key instance would be I almost never put a for sale sign outside a property, and exactly to respect their sentiment, because a lot of time the neighbors come to know, and I think they're already going through a level of emotion, which is pretty distressing to the family, and you don't want to publicize that. So I do a very gentle approach, marketing, and I get them on board. I let them know what I'm doing. It is their home. It ultimately make them realize it is their equity ultimately,
Yeah.
and I'm lending them the support in my shape and form. Like I also do a very gentle media and social media marketing. Everything is just touch and go, but nothing aggressive. Not go rah rah rah.
Yeah.
It's the only, unfortunately, instance in our industry which is a lose-win situation.
Yeah, you don't
So-
necessarily feel good, but you're there
Yeah.
to do the job.
You're trying
Correct.
to grant them as much control
Yeah.
as they can have.
So I had to provide a marketing package to the lawyer, and he wanted to sign up. And it
Yep.
was, and so I didn't have a choice in that matter.
Yep.
And it made me feel like a little bit worse. Of course, I had to just put on, my realtor pants and do my thing.
Yeah.
But it was kind of hard, I thought.
It is, and in that case too, a lot of the marketing instructions do come from the vendor or the
Yes.
lawyer. And in my case, I've been very fortunate that the team of people that I work with on a continuous basis, they're very much on the empathy and compassion side.
nice.
We don't come hard knocking on doors, unless it really absolutely is mandated. But you need a really strong reason for that.
I had to knock on the door.
No.
I was like, and I was just like,
Yeah.
oh.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
You kind of have to just pull
Yeah.
it all in to your
Yeah.
core.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's tough, and you becoming the news bearer makes it even more tougher.
Yeah, which was a lie, but whatever.
Of course, we found that
People
out,
have
yeah.
emotions. We won't
Yeah.
judge too hard. Have you ever had situations where people don't let you in? And
Oh.
they're just like, nope, sorry, I'm not moving. I'm not.
Oh, I've been sworn a lot, cussed a lot. Doors been slammed on my face,
Lovely.
and you don't.
It's just,
I mean,
it's just a job.
it's just the way it is,
Yeah.
and people spew a lot of personal information in the height of their emotions. So,
Mm.
and then I have a responsibility to share that with
Right.
the
The
lawyers
vendor.
and the vendor.
Yes,
Yeah.
Which again is unfortunate, but again it's just because it's too sensitive. But yes, I have been absolutely been pushed to my limits with anyway, yeah, no, I've had a lot of negative interactions.
Okay.
So do you
with
go
the door,
back to the vendor and say, hey,
Yeah.
I've tried multiple times, won't get access, and then do they have to go through like
It's a
getting
bailiff. Yeah.
Yeah. So it gets into the bailiff, or if you feel you're threatened, then they can even provide a sheriff to go with you.
Oh, right.
And unfortunately, I hadn't had a chance, but there has been in a house some time ago, which was deemed from the criminal activity. It was a remote part. You just knew you were walking into a bit trouble, and you see things inside, and like, oh yeah, okay. But again, that foreclosure didn't pan out because a lot of times people at the last minute they will pay their mortgages out. Not by default, by getting alternative lending,
Yeah.
just to save
They'll
the house.
find a solution.
They'll find a solution.
Criminal lending.
Yeah.
Lending.
Lending of sorts.
Yeah. Mysterious money just happened to come
Yes, it's
today.
weird.
Multicolored lending.
Yeah.
Benetton lending. I'm kidding. Let's
So
keep going with
funny.
that. But
Yeah.
sorry.
No, I love it. Okay, that's
yeah.
that's good because we know that sometimes sometimes it's easy, like you said, they're just gone, or sometimes it's hard. So to go over the process, like you were talking before, Sheila, the home goes for sale, the offer gets accepted by the bank. There's a court date set. Now, COVID put kind of an interesting spin on that.
Yeah.
Do people still go to court downtown, or is it now just all online?
I mean, wherever the BC Supreme Court is in the jurisdiction, so New West seems to be the busiest
Okay.
courthouse.
I had to go to Vancouver for mine, I'm pretty
Yep.
sure. So
Yeah. Oh,
it just depends on what district it's in. Is that correct? So it could be
Correct, yeah.
Abbotsford or
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it could be. And yes, so a couple of things changed. So 2020, 2021, everything was over a Zoom call. And at that time, it was only an interaction between the lawyers and the master or the judge. So myself, our colleagues, we weren't party to that. So they relaxed the rules a bit. So the courts are open, which means no matter what, public is allowed. So you can show up at the court. But the protocol on the offer submissions changed. So now you got to submit your final bid 3 business days before the court date directly to the lawyer.
Okay.
And it has to go directly to the lawyers, not
Right.
even to me. And the lawyer's going to be the one contacting, say, you, and just saying, okay, if there's any feedback, and they'll be the ones in touch informing other bids if they've won or lost. And people can show up at the court, but you just can't show up with an envelope and hoping to change your bid
Yeah,
unless
that's
the
right.
judge says, well, there's a little technical thing that can we address this, or if there's, but that is 1% chance. I mean, it's very little chance, sorry.
Will the judge always pick one offer or change some things? Or have you ever seen where the judge is like, no, none of these are kind of acceptable terms? And then you're back starting from scratch?
Oh, yeah. So it's interesting. I'll actually add to that. Imagine the owner can show up at the court. You'll have great offers.
That was my other
So
question,
that's
too.
what my people were doing. They
Yeah.
kept showing up to fight it.
Yep.
And we thought she was going to show up on court day because I kept looking around being like,
Yep.
this girl going to show up? Or,
Yeah.
And if they show up and they contesting, that's not the value of my place. And if they
Yeah.
can prove it, that the judge will say, yep, nope, deal's off. You go back. They'll give the seller, pre-seller, some time to prove to the court that that value is what they think it is. And if they don't, then we're back on the drawing table.
that's how we did that's why it was like 2 years or whatever. Like they can
Yeah.
really draw it out
it
on for
can.
empathy or whatever.
And unfortunately, it's all. And again, if they're within their rights, but if they can, it's adding to their legal costs, which is adding to their
Adding
equity.
to their bill.
And the bills are phenomenal in a foreclosure proceeding, right?
Yeah.
So it's not, and again, this is all about you trying to tell somebody, and if well they absorb this, that it ultimately comes down to that and how they perceive or receive the information. But back to Sheila, you were asking, So imagine you have 2 identical offers.
Yeah.
And the judge can say, well, the first offer, or the original offer, is X, and my offer or another offer is X as well. And they're likely going to give the first offer the opportunity to revise, not the second offer.
Oh, interesting. So it depends on when it's submitted.
So some people want to be first in the gate then.
Absolutely. There's benefits to being first in the gate, and you get that sort of privilege extended to you or courtesy extended to you, as long as it's within reason. Like even and the vendor's lawyer can also make a recommendation. They can just say, well, these people did their homework, they've done the diligence, we've had them,
Right.
documented. So there's value to that. Absolutely. Yeah.
So we had when I had to go down for court, and it was back when you go down and wait, and you have to wait and wait because you don't know your court time necessarily. There was one that was before ours, and there was a lower offer that got accepted based off of the fact that the seller in the house had kids, and one person's offer had dates before Christmas and one was after, and the judge, because it depends on the judge, right? The judge could wake up and be on whatever side of the bed that day. And they were like, no, we're going to go with this other offer even though it's lower because the possession is after Christmas and that person should spend Christmas in their home. Which I was very surprised at, because in my head, I'm like, no, get out. You didn't pay your mortgage for 2, but I'm a rule follower. So
I'm surprised they wouldn't just go to the higher offer because it's they're trying to recoup as much cost as they can and
very
just ask them to change the date.
Yeah, it is strange. I mean, I'm not a judge, but I would have imagined they would have given the higher offer to see if they could amend the dates.
Yeah. It's kind of at the whim of the legal system.
They did not. And it was based solely off of the fact that there was Christmas. Around Yeah. So
Fair enough.
now we just had Christmas. It's January.
Yeah.
Are there certain months out of the year that you see more foreclosures? We're really depressing people this month. We're talking about foreclosures
sorry.
and divorces,
January,
but
after
It's important.
we gave you who in the room for
Weather.
Christmas. So
No, it's there's no particular season. There's a redemption period, right? 6 months. So the proceedings start within 6 months redemption period, and the owner of the house has 6 months to tackle a foreclosure. But after that, then you get into a conduct of sale, which is when you have a legal document to force a foreclosure. But no, it can happen anytime. I mean, I'm starting to see a lot more surfacing. Not because it's January, but maybe it's because January. I mean, I've never had a particular month.
well, interest rates are going up, and
Yeah.
people are being able to afford less and less.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
and that's at the time of this filming, of course.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see when this goes live a year from now. It could be different.
Correct.
So,
Correct. Yeah.
okay. So, do you have any advice? So, last thing here. Do you have any advice for agents that might be taking on a foreclosure as their very first foreclosure? Because, like, I didn't know that maybe I shouldn't go there by myself, and you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think look at every case, every scenario case by case, and but always have that hat of compassion and empathy, because you just don't know what the family, if somebody's living there, what they've been through.
Right.
A lot of time mental illness surfaces in conversations, and you realize that there was one family member or something happened that was very unique to the family.
Right.
And just allow for a lot of room for forgiveness, and not because we're here there to forgive or whatever, but in that sense that we do our job in the best ways possible. Like Kristy was saying, you know, ask them to cooperate and see if they can prepare the house for sale if they're living in there. In worst cases where they're absolutely hostile, not cooperative, then you have your legal, you know, your legal opinions and resources by your side. But I think it's in that sense, just be gentle with foreclosures.
That's good advice. Be gentle.
Yeah.
Just keep it low key, keep it gentle, and hopefully, you know, you are actually helping a family as well. They may not see that way, but you are. And by the end of the sale, sometimes you get a tremendous amount of gratitude when you find out what family's been through. Sometimes you don't. And that's okay.
You have to make your peace.
You have to make a peace, yeah.
Okay, that's so good. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
This is great. Thank you so much. You always have the most interesting things to say.
No, it's all good.
So again, guys, foreclosures, you're going to come across one probably, whether it's your buyer who wants to buy one, your seller wants to sell one, maybe it's your neighbor if you're a homeowner and you're listening. They happen, and everyone's circumstances are different.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely be careful with that. Make sure you review your title searches, and the risks are different. So make sure you have a professional on your side.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
Cheers,
Thanks
you
so
guys.
much.
Thank
Cheers.
you so much.
Absolutely.
You're so great.
Yes.
I had fun.
Thank you for listening to Spilling the Tea, a real estate podcast with Kristy Massero and Shelagh Maychek.